Hey everybody, Meriden Gaming here, and it's time for another Borderlands 3 build video. Today we're going to be focusing on Moze and our Mama Bear build. That's right, we're using the Iron Cub because we have the newest DLC, and I can tell you this is probably one of my favorite builds. It's so easy to use. Pretty much the Iron Cub just runs around and mows down the enemies for you. You just kind of help a little bit with those armored enemies, but otherwise he takes care of everything else. So let's take a look. All right, like I said, we're going to be using the Iron Cub for our main skill. Basically, if you haven't played with this yet, instead of jumping into the giant Iron Bear mech, you summon a small, probably 2 feet tall little robot that just runs around and uses whatever weapon you have selected as its secondary. It has two of them, which if you've were paying attention in my Be the Bear build, whenever there's a skill that gives you plus 60% damage if your Iron Bear or Iron Cub are using the same weapon. So we're definitely going to be using that again. It's a great combination. It's one of the highest damage buffs in the game. And then also skills that affect Iron Bear also affect Iron Cub. And of course, Iron Cub uses less fuel, but he doesn't do quite as much damage, but you can still one-shot enemies depending on your build, which that's what we're going for here. We're trying to take out and thin out those mobs, but he still does a ton of damage to bosses as well. Anyway, first point, you could really put this anywhere you want, but it's basically to help keep your Iron Bear topped off, or Iron Cub. It's called biofuel. Whenever you ignite an enemy, and you basically are going to be wanting to use fire weapons to get this and multiple other skills triggered, it gives Iron Bear your ammo regen, or armor regen, which is his health. We'll put 2 points into big surplus. Basically, whenever uh, the Iron Cub is recharging, you gain bonus incendiary damage. So this gives you just that little bit of extra damage to help take down a few of those enemies while you're still waiting for the Iron Cub to regen. But like I said, Moze really doesn't do all that much damage. I focus mostly on the Iron Cub. Then we put 5 points into really big guns, straight 20% damage to your Iron Cub. This is another one of those little extra bonus damage that allow him to one-shot those standard enemies. We put 3 points into double time. You could really put these anywhere you want. You could put it more into the biofuel if you wanted, or into the harmonious havoc. The problem is the reason I'm not using harmonious havoc uh, is because I don't have matching weapons typically. It's all different manufacturers. But if you do like using all of one manufacturer, this is another great option if you don't need the movement speed bonus. And this is always while your action skill is active. So sometimes I even activate Iron Cub just to get the movement bonus. And he keeps up with you pretty well. Then we put 3 points into Explosive Fury. Basically, you gain a straight status effect damage and status effect chance. This is what helps you use those skills that give you the buffs for the igniting enemies. That being said, we put for our augment for our skill the fuel for the fire. So basically, whenever you inflict a status effect, either you or the Iron Cub, his armor is restored 20% of his max armor. This is what keeps him out there, even when taking a lot of the aggro. It basically, as long as you're both attacking different enemies, you will pretty much keep him topped off. The only time I've really ever had him go down is due to the fuel eventually running out. Then we put 1 point into Fired Up. Whenever you apply a stats effect to an enemy, Moze gains increased fire rate and it stacks up to 5 times. So especially when you're using one of those really high firing rates like a Monarch or a Light Show, it just increases your fire rate even more to take down those enemies. And this really helps when the Iron Bear is down in order to take care of those enemies that are trying to swarm you. Then we put 5 points into nitrotrinadium engines. Basically, this just keeps your Iron Cub out there longer. And then whenever he is recharging, it speeds up the cooldown rate. Then we put 1 point into Never Going to Give You Up. Basically, whenever you apply a status effect, your Iron Bear gains fuel. You might take a point out of somewhere else and put it into this to give you up to 10% fuel return, like the take one out of limit break to put here. I never really saw him going down in the middle of fights though, so I don't think it's all that necessary with the other skills we have chosen. That also gives you access to the My Little Friend augment. I haven't tried this out. I like the fact that he recharged because I wanted to keep him out. But if you do select this one, it gives him the incendiary Vladoff assault rifle, which will help trigger those other incendiary, status effects applied buffs. Then we put 1 point into feature creep. This is just a straight increase to damage and damage resistance. You definitely want this. This helps keep your Iron Cub out longer. Then we put 3 points into limit break. This game gives you action skill cooldown rate whenever you inflict a status effect on an enemy, and this will also apply even when your Iron Cub is not out. So this, as long as you're inflicting those status effects, like I literally just used my Monarch and just sprayed a bunch of the enemies to increase my cooldown, and this also stacks up to 10 times, so that's very handy. Then the last point in the skill tree we put into running on fumes. Basically, whenever you ignite an enemy, Iron Bear does not consume fuel for 6 seconds. So this is what you want to be doing. You want to be using those fire weapons. You want to be igniting those enemies, because as long as you continue to ignite them, your Iron Cub can stay out indefinitely, as long as his armor is recharging, which is why we use that Fuel the Fire augment. Next, we'll be moving on to the Demolition Woman skill tree. This is basically just to give your Iron Cub a little bit of a boost. We put 3 points into deadlines. Basically, he drains less fuel, and then whenever you kill an enemy, he returns fuel to his system. So that kind of augments the never going to give you up skill. Then we put 2 points into Grizzled. This is just a straight cooldown rate reduction. So if you are playing without the Iron Cub out and he's recharging, if you can get a few kills, that will bring it back even faster. Because I want to say it's 15 to 20, well, 10 to 20 second recharge. I can't remember the exact number. I didn't time it out. But if you get a couple kills, I mean, that already brings it down to, somewhere in the 8 to 15 range. And then we put 5 points into Stainless Steel Bear. This is more maximum fuel, keeps him out longer, plus 30% armor, which is his health to keep him out longer, and a straight 20% damage buff for your Iron Cub. This is what gives him that another skill that gives him that one-shot capability. And then we're going to move on to the Shield of Retribution. You know me, I like the railgun as the secondary weapon. It just does so much damage. You could use some of the other skills, but this is the one that I found does the absolute most damage and the most targeted damage. If you're running up against a lot of mobs, the grenade launcher might help, or the rocket pods, but I found that the railgun is the best option for me. We're going to put 5 points into Armored Infantry. Basically, as long as your shields are active, this gives you that damage reduction and straight gun damage. And of course, this is going to be very similar to our last build with Moze that gave us, our health is down to 1 health, but we have 118,000 shield. So basically, your shields are always active. If they're not active, then you're in fight for your life mode. But this is basically just a straight 13% gun or 15% gun damage boost all the time. Then we put 3 points into Thin Red Line. This is what helps give you that boosted. This does work in conjunction with the Deathless artifact to compound the amount of maximum shields you have. Then we put 2 points into Vladoff Ingenuity, which increases your maximum shield and your shield recharge rate, and also gives you a nice little resistance to shock damage, because that is what you are the most susceptible to. But yeah, anything you can do to increase that maximum shield is always a great option. I found that the 118,000 is around the best option for Mayhem 10 mode. As long as once you get down to the halfway, using the Transformer Shield and Thunderball Fists combination that I like to run, you pretty much just top yourself off all the way back up, as long as you're taking cover and just playing smart. And then to increase our incendiary damage, we put 1 point into experimental munitions, Whenever you score a critical hit, you gain increased or you deal bonus incendiary damage. So you're wanting to go for those headshots, but I mean, it's Borderlands. We're always going for headshots. So this is basically just a straight damage buff for us. All right, then on to Bottomless mags. Yes, that is right. We are running a 4-tree build. I know a lot of the other builds I've seen, they typically focus on one or two, well, typically two of the skill trees, but I found that this is a great combination in order to beef up your Iron Cub. We put 5 points in the Cloud of Lead. This is mainly to help get us to the higher level things, but once again, it's increased incendiary damage every fourth shot, and every fourth shot also doesn't take up ammo, or doesn't use ammo. But with all those other incendiary damage buffs, this allows Moze to mow down enemies just as well as her Iron Cub does. Well, not just as well, but pretty close. And then we put 1 point into Daka Bear. Now, on the standard Iron Bear, this basically creates a man turret for one of your allies to hop on the back and do more damage, but with it being Iron Cub, it's just a straight 20% damage boost. So like I said, he can one-shot those standard mobs because of all these damage boosts that we're giving him. We put 3 points into Stoke the Embers. This increases your incendiary damage yet again. I mean, that's what this build is about, is incendiary damage and boosting your Cub in order to take out those enemies really quickly. Then we put 1 point into Redistribution. Whenever you score a critical hit, it regenerates ammo and health. Of course, the health really doesn't matter because of the Deathless mod that we're using, but this basically allows you, especially with those faster firing weapons, to regenerate your ammo. Now, this regenerates into your magazine, not your ammo reserves. So you will slowly go down, but I found that 1 extra point, it helps keep your ammo from running out quite as often. Then we put 5 points into Scorching RPMs. It's mainly for the Iron Bear effect, not necessarily the Moze effect with the fire rate and critical damage, although it is nice. But the Iron Bear gains increased hardpoint damage of 35%. Once again, we're going for buffing our bear to get those one-shot kills. Then this is actually just from our class mod, so ignore that. I don't have a class mod for the Iron Cub tree right now because I haven't farmed enough. So eventually I'll probably move it over to there. And then we put our final point into Specialist Bear. This is that 60% bonus damage that I said, or I mentioned earlier, because we are using the Iron Cub, which if you read, it says he uses 2 of the weapon of whatever's in his secondary slot, which is that railgun. This is what allows us to do those one-shot kills. That straight 60% damage buff is unheard of. It is one of the top buffs in the game. Anyway, all right, now let's get over to the weapons and other equipment that we use. Once again, you know this combination from before. The transformer plus the ability to use a shock weapon, which we use that Thunderball Fists. You know this is my favorite option as Moze because you basically never go down and you are constantly regenerating your shield. That in combination with the Deathless artifact allows us to pretty much be at constant or near constant full on our shield. So if you're not familiar with it, the Transformer Shield, basically 100% of shock damage basically goes into your shield, recharges your shield. So that is a great combination with a high damage and splash damage weapon like the Thunderball Fist. You can also use an Electric Light Show or an Electric Monarch as well. As far as the extra bonuses on the Deathless artifact, you want to find that 27 or the extra action skill cooldown rate so that when your Iron Bear or Iron Cub does go down, it recharges a whole lot faster. And this one has the bonuses of reducing elemental damage to you and extra movement speed. So this is a really great option if you can manage to get all those options. As far as the grenade goes, it really doesn't matter what you use, but I do like this option of the action skill end. It gives me that bonus incendiary damage, which you have all those other incendiary damage buffs, which will allow you, especially if you can take out a few of those enemies and you trigger the straight, -2 seconds every time you kill an enemy to get your Iron Cub back up. When it comes to the class mod, the main reason I'm using this one is for the ability to, every time, after a few seconds of firing a weapon, you gain bonus corrosive damage. So no matter what weapon you're using, you can help take down those armored targets a whole lot faster. Especially when you're using a Monarch that has a big magazine, you can mow down those enemies that your Iron Bear has a little bit more trouble with. As far as our actual weapons, I've got two different Monarchs, one being the corrosive to help deal with those armored targets. And then of course on this one, it has that action skill end. That's not the best option because of the 15% life steal because of our deathless mod. What I'd really like to find is one that gives us a straight bonus buff to damage when our action skill ends. That's what you're really looking for. And then we're also using the Molten Monarch. This is another great option, that action skill active that triggers novas. This will help to deal with those enemies that get too close to you. Of course, we always have the light shows. Those are always a great backup option for when you run out of ammo on your main weapons. So I always have a couple of those for those longer missions. Then also we are using our Hellwalker. This 20,000 damage times 10, plus it has the ignite chance. That plays really well into our build. Of course, some of the options you don't get because it basically does fire both barrels at once. So some of those buffs don't play into it as well as the Molten Monarch do. And then of course our ever-present Thunderball Fist to go with our Transformer. This basically is one of the best combinations of shields and weapons I've seen in the game so far. If you don't have one, get one. Anyway, we're going to be going to Athena's for our gameplay. I like using that area as a test bed just because there is so many different types of mobs. You've got shielded, you've got armored, you've got health, you've got big, small. I mean, you got all kinds of different mobs to test out on. And then we will be fighting Captain Trant as well. And this is definitely one of the higher damage builds that I have for Moze, which most of the time doesn't even involve Moze doing the damage. It's your Iron Cub. But we take down Captain Trant in probably about 15 seconds, I want to say. Somewhere between 15 and 20 seconds. Our Cub takes down his shield really quickly in just a couple of shots, and then we mow him down with a Monarch in just seconds after his shield goes down. So it's a really great combination if you want to be able to solo a lot of stuff, because you do have some survivability, but you basically just run your Cub out there. He takes most of the aggro and just takes down all those enemies. So let's get to the gameplay. Alright, once again I sped it up just a little bit. This is about 50% faster than normal gameplay for the first two clips. As you can see, the Iron Cub is just one-shotting enemies. I'm not really even having to try. I mean, look at that. I mean, I'd done a little bit of damage, but he would have one-shotted him. The one problem is he does eventually run out of fuel, and then you're kind of on your own a little bit to fend for yourself. But as you can see, I'm still not going down, even with there being several big enemies still left on the field. But yeah, now we're switching to our incendiary to hopefully take down an enemy in order to get him back out, which he just naturally regens a little bit faster. And look at that. Even against, he doesn't do quite as well against the armored targets, like I said, but otherwise he just takes them down. Alright, and here's where he's going to shine. Well, problem is I had used him to run to this area, so his health was going down quite a bit, or I didn't have much fuel left in him. The one problem I would say is that his targeting, he doesn't always target the closest enemy. I don't know what the parameters are on the targeting. This is in Mayhem 10, and here's an enemy that we have an issue with just because he was immune to shock damage, which is what our Iron Cub does as his primary damage type. So that does cause a slight issue with us trying to take down those uh, enemies that have shields. Alright, now we're going to skip to Captain Trot in just a second. And here we go. This is in standard speed, just to kind of give you an idea of the ability to take him down. I mean, look, he took him down a full quarter of his shield with every shot, and then we sit here with our Corrosive Monarch, triggering that incendiary damage as well, to take down Captain Trot in absolutely no time. I mean, isn't that awesome? Less than 20 seconds. Alright everybody, well I hope you enjoyed the build and the gameplay. Like I said, this is probably one of my favorite builds for Moze just because it doesn't require a lot of action from you other than to help take down those armored targets. Your Iron Bear pretty much just runs around and mows down all the enemies for you. Mows down. Yeah, that was a pun. Anyway, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you have any suggestions on builds you want to see or specific weapons you want to see a build around, just leave that down in the comments and I'll get to that for you. And once again, this is Meriden Gaming, and I'll see you in the wasteland.